Out here in the stream, as in the streaming era, I fight for my dreams. I get my heart into my living.
You encourage drinking or marijuana use on the show?
I don't need a fight, cause Evelyn's right. Or you could sponsor an emu. I'm Batman.
That's your tweetable moment, folks. That's your tweetable moment. If Mark Zuckerberg makes a metaverse, is that Web3? No, it's Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse.
He's like us. He's flawed.
Just a little segue.
That's some dope shit, dude. That's really, really nice.
Woody-hoo! Woody-hoo! Yeah, you know, I don't know what happened because once upon a time I pivoted. I became a talk show host. Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous was born, and then this stamp got put on me when I became an implementer for EOS. But let me tell you something. I think I always was an entrepreneur. I think I was. How do I get rid of the stamp? Just hold on. Let me just pull that out. There we go. I think I always was an entrepreneur. I think I always never wanted to work for the man, always wanted to work for myself as a creative person. I never loved structure. I never loved being stifled. I never loved being suffocated. I always wanted to be able to soar, to create, I wanted to follow the rules. I wanted to bend the rules, break the rules, make my own rules. But I'll tell you something, that one thing that I've learned, and not the hard way, the beautiful way, is that structure can actually liberate instead of suffocating. And so whether it was my entrepreneurial ventures at my previous companies, Crayon, Evolution, one I sold in spite of myself, one I didn't because of myself, those learnings, but also just the ability to blaze my own trail. There's something, you know, they say that entrepreneurs are masochists. That may be true. And certainly if you love pain, that helps. But there's actually pleasure. There's pleasure in the journey. When you love the journey and you have a core focus, a core target, when you absolutely have a purpose plus you love that journey, that is something I've learned through reading a book called Happier, what's called the question of questions. How do you find and how do you keep lasting, sustained happiness? So I decided to actually create a little spin-off. I even produced a whole bunch of little overlays, if you will, all AI generated, I might add, the entrepreneurial edition of Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous. And helping me in the inaugural first episode is, there are going to be lots of surprises today, Eric Keiles. Eric is, I love it. I was on his EOS page. We're both implementers at EOS. He calls himself the champion of the frustrated entrepreneur. And I was like, I fed this into, I don't know, Mid-Journey or ChatGPT. And I say, what does the champion of the frustrated entrepreneur look like? And this is what came out. Eric Keiles is the champion of the frustrated entrepreneur. In his 30-plus year journey through the entrepreneurial world, he's almost seen it all. After creating and operating 8 different businesses and helping hundreds of clients, Eric now helps other business leaders get what they want out of their businesses via speaking, coaching, and sharing his experiences. Eric currently is an implementer of EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system. And prior to that, Eric founded and operated Square 2 Marketing, a digital marketing agency based in Philadelphia. He implemented EOS at Square 2 and the business took off. So much so that Eric was able to exit in 2023 and start to help other folks enjoy the same experience that he had. A popular writer and public speaker, Eric has provided expert insight on panels and speaking appearances throughout America's entrepreneurial community. He's also a guest lecturer at several universities, a graduate of George Washington University and Temple University, where he got his MBA. Eric and his family reside in Delray Beach, Florida, and the New Jersey seashore. I guess they call it living the EOS life. Eric, your guest number one, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate it. And I totally connected emotionally with your journey. So thanks for having me on the inaugural episode. I appreciate it.
You are very welcome. I played around. I'm doing lots of things. For example, this was fed into AI as in the entrepreneurial journey. It's funny because it actually created, I didn't ask it for a side by side, but I guess you have, you've got the orange, I've got the blue tint, having a lot of fun in terms of the creative. Now, let's do one more as well. How about do you like the fact that this? I'm just getting started. I'm just getting started.
No, it's great. And, I like the touch of gratefulness, especially as we approach Thanksgiving. You should be grateful that you could do anything you want on this episode, interview whoever you want and talk about what you ever want. And that's a gift.
I can, but I chose you.
Appreciate it.
So, well, let's begin. Let's begin with this idea because, in fact, I've got. I told you I got lots of surprises here. Just playing around with by the way, amazing. I still think unbelievably incredible how the functionality that we have as creators, as entrepreneurs, right? Whether it's through various AI tools or through StreamYard, the ability to produce what I hope people would agree is somewhat of a professionally produced show. But this is your page on EOS. I have my own mini site. This is yours. But I really was, attracted to this idea of the champion of the frustrated entrepreneur. Just tell us a little bit about the positioning and the branding of this statement, and then we'll take a step back. And I want to, Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's journey. I want to know about the entrepreneur's journey. So why champion of the frustrated entrepreneur?
Yeah, there's a multi-part answer to that question, and thank you for asking it. So I went through this program, gosh, it had to be 8, 10 years ago, and it was called Stagen Leadership Academy, really wonderful program in Dallas. And one of the things that they talked about was what is your true purpose? What is your brilliance? And it was about a month-long exercise to really get down under the layers of the onion to decide like what really drives me. And what became evident very quickly is that my passion comes with helping other entrepreneurs achieve the vision that they want. And I've done that through a variety of businesses. I just never realized that that was what really makes me jump out of bed in the morning. So, through the marketing agency that I exited from, we only helped entrepreneurs scale their business. But what really got me thinking is that I'm constantly receiving calls from folks, whether they're struggling with their business or a child of theirs is starting a business, and every time I hang up from one of those calls, I am engaged and fired up because the helping part of someone who's stuck or frustrated or doesn't know whether to go left or right is what I enjoy helping them break through. EOS, as my current chapter of my career, is a perfect complement to that because every single company is hitting the ceiling in some way and they're trying to break through. EOS is typically the framework that helps them break through that ceiling. But the joy that I get after a session of helping a frustrated entrepreneur once again carries through. So thank you so much for identifying that. And I think also from like a messaging point of view, we want to connect emotionally with those folks. Anybody who's doing great in their business and they're sailing along does not need Eric Keiles or Joseph Jaffe, but someone who is frustrated, they do need someone to kind of help them show them a different way, and that's where that fits with the EOS component of my journey.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, in fact, as I said, I've been I'm addicted to Midjourney and what's the chat called, Wally or Dali or I don't know, Dallas, I don't know. But one of the things that actually Gino Wickman, who's the founder of EOS, wrote a book called Traction, And by the way, anyone who is watching live, if you ask a question, or we'll look at the comments on our LinkedIn page, we'll send you a complimentary copy of it. But he talks about the 5 frustrations of an entrepreneur. So I went back to AI and decided to illustrate what they look like. So the 5 frustrations are: the first one is control, or actually, lack of control. The first 2 are lacks of. And the example used is almost like, I felt like there was a bus hurtling down, a road at 60 miles per hour, but I wasn't on the bus. I was chasing the bus. I was behind it. So, it comes down to this idea of, are you running your business, or is your business running you? I'll run through the 5 and then love to hear your thoughts on them. The second, of course, is profit, but specifically not enough, or the lack thereof. These are somewhat, I would say, relatively straightforward. Third one are people issues, and for the most part, most of issues that frustrate an entrepreneur, that prevent entrepreneurs from getting what they want from their business, are already people issues. I mean, when last I checked, most businesses had people, and the machines have not taken over yet. The fourth one, and you alluded to it, is this idea of hitting the ceiling. And finally, the fifth one is just nothing's working, which is very much connected to hitting the ceiling, because you try again and again and again, and you work harder, not smarter, and eventually you burn out. But I want to hear your thoughts on that. But specifically, Eric, why I wanted to show this now is the hitting the ceiling part is interesting, because if you haven't hit the ceiling, you will hit the ceiling. So I would almost expand it a bit and say, even if you are not frustrated now, you may become frustrated. And if you've never hit the ceiling, you can bet your bottom dollar it's coming.
100%. First of all, it's fascinating how businesses succeed despite some of their shortcomings when it comes to structure and people and things like that. But what typically happens is that the business breaks at some point. And the old phrase, what got you here won't get you there, applies. At my marketing firm, everything broke at $1 million in revenue in revenue. Again, after $2 million in revenue, what got us to 1 million didn't work. At 4 million, it broke again, and we had to restructure the company. And that's very typical of companies that are looking to scale. I think that one of the root causes of that is that nobody starts their business because they're a organizational expert or a business growth consultant. They start their business because they have a passion or an interest in something. The engineer starts the engineering firm, the accountant starts the accounting firm. They don't really have that toolbox ready to go, that when this happens, I break this out of the toolbox and it helps me get to the next plateau. And that's what causes a lot of frustration, because you were doing great at 2 million in sales, and you got to 3 million, and things started to fray at the edges. Now you're at 4 and everything's breaking. What the heck happened? I thought we were doing great. And that insight into why you hit the ceiling or why everything breaks at a certain level is one of the frustrations that I feel entrepreneurs exhibit most frequently.
I really love the eloquentness. Can you have an eloquentness, or the eloquency? I don't know, of this idea of the business breaks.
Mhm.
It's 2 words, and it's very powerful. And I had a guest on my show a couple of years ago, and he said, "At scale, cracks become chasms," and that speaks to the concept. My 5th book is called Built to Suck. It speaks generally to the large companies, right? EOS typically works best, in a privately held company between 10 and 250 employees. So we're focusing, you and I, we focus on, let's say, small and medium businesses, but there are these inflection points. And I like the fact that you're not even talking about a crack. You're talking about, you're talking about a breakage of sort. I found it with my first company, with both of my companies, I could never break through 10 employees. I just could never do it. I would get to 10, and then we would bounce back off that ceiling so hard down to 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 implosion. And that was a number. And I think there's probably another number. It's probably around about 25 or 30, at which point you kind of know something, as you said, what got you here may not necessarily be what you need to get you to the next level.
Well, at EOS, we talk about process as one of the 6 key components of a well-run business, and you have to be 80% proficient in all 6 key components to get where you want to go. One of those key components is process, right, or the systems that are in your business. And I find it to be incredibly true, is that your company will collapse to the level of your systems. Being an architect of tight business systems is also not a skill set that's often found in your typical entrepreneur. But understanding that you need good systems that can carry you over this hump is something that is foreign to most businesses. One, they don't really document their systems. Two, if they have systems, they're not followed by all. So understanding that if your systems are weak, your company will collapse down to the level of that system is a mind-blowing revelation for most folks because they're not understanding that that's something that they have to lean into or improve.
Seems so obvious, right? To be able to say, hey, everybody, it's like, here's some sheet music. We're going to, hey, choir, we're all going to follow the sheet music. In fact, we'll have different parts. We've got tenor, we've got bass, we've got baritone, we've got soprano, we've got different instruments. So not everyone is doing the same thing the same way, but some of you are going to be doing this thing the same way. Some of you are going to be doing that thing the same way. And if all of you doing this thing the same way work in harmony with that thing that same way, with the right cadence, with the right rhythm, with the right pulse, with the right integration, guess what happens? Music, as opposed to a cacophony of sound. I mean, it's that old statement: common sense is anything but common. Is this actually just common sense? I don't know. Is it?
It is and it is because only after you've experienced it, it becomes common sense. You don't know what you don't know kind of thing. So, to use your symphony example, you could also have a people problem that you're not aware of, right? And the whole goal is to have the right people in the right seats. So if you have beautiful sheet music and you have beautiful artists who are making that music, and then you have one person that just graduated from music school and isn't quite at the capacity of the rest of them, it ruins the whole beautiful harmony. It's the same thing in business, right? Having the right people in the right seats is so critical because you could have wonderful systems, but if your people aren't at the capacity to do that, that's another flaw. And that's where, your symphony is a very interesting analogy because if you could have the 6 key components of your business, vision, people, data, traction, issues, and process, all working in harmony, you have a beautiful business that's running quite nicely. But if anything's out of whack, not sure you can get to that next level.
Yeah, so I actually found a little piece of video, and I think for people that are watching that are thinking, "What the hell is?" I don't know if the hell part there, but what the hell is EOS? Here's a little 1-minute clip that might fill you in on what Eric and myself as 2 agency owners, because that's why we're even here today. We're both agency owners. We're both people that have worked on Madison Avenue or worked within the boutique or the communications world, and here we are now as business coaches. So please watch this, and then Eric will take a step back, and I want to hear about your entrepreneurial journey.
If you've hit a wall and your business has hit a ceiling, help is on the way. Tens of thousands of business leaders like you, with 10 to 250 employees, have achieved rapid growth and a more balanced life by running on the entrepreneurial operating system. EOS isn't a computer operating system, it's a people operating system that harnesses human energy through a simple set of tools and principles. You didn't become an entrepreneur to feel burned out or stuck in place. EOS gets you unstuck by organizing the hundreds of challenges you face every day and making them more manageable. You're able to solve issues before they become problems, get the right people in the right seats, make meetings so productive that you actually look forward to them, and build a culture of accountability. When you run on EOS, everyone is working toward the same goal. Your business runs more smoothly and profitably. You break through the ceiling to achieve growth, and you simply enjoy life more. Get started today at eosworldwide.com.
So there's a little bit about what we've been doing, and by the way, we're experimenting on LinkedIn Live, so I'm trying to figure out exactly how. I just went and commented myself, but I don't know if I have to comment within the video, which gets very meta because then I'm commenting on myself, which is maybe narcissistic. So I'm not going to go ahead and throw any more spanners in the works. But what I am going to do is want you to tell, to share your journey, your specific, as I said, instead of Joseph Campbell's, the hero's journey, this is Joseph Jaffe's, the entrepreneurial journey. So what got you here? And then I'm going to disappear, and then I'll come back and ask you a few questions.
Well, what got me here is that I had my very first job out of college, which I got fired after 18 months because I had too many ideas how to improve the business, and that was a eye awakening experience. The reason being is I've always been entrepreneurial, like you said in your intro. Sometimes I didn't realize it. Sometimes it was weird to be an entrepreneur back in the day, but I always liked the creation of something that would generate some profit and also help some people enjoy their journey as well. So I started my journey independently, had a variety of businesses, but my main business was called Square Two Marketing. And it's today a 45 person or so marketing agency, allegedly based in Philadelphia, but after COVID, we went remote. And it was a great company. We were helping clients, we had good employees, but I felt that we weren't getting enough out of the business. So I started to ask some of my entrepreneurial buddies, hey, what do you think I should do? I'm kind of stuck. And several of them said, have you heard about EOS or have you read the book Traction? So when I dove into the material, it really hit me like a ton of bricks. We had systems in our business, systems for hiring people, paying bills, building websites, and so forth, but we didn't have a framework to run the entire company. And that was a big awakening for me. We hired an EOS implementer, just like you and I are, Joe. And she was a total rock star, took us through all the basics, built a strong foundation, helped us really organize and get on the platform, and things just exploded. Margins doubled, profits tripled, employee happiness was off the charts, client turnover went away, and everything was going really well. That at that point, I felt, wow, look at how my business turned around. Maybe it's a good time for me to exit, and which I did and sold my half of the business to my partner, Mike. But I watched our EOS implementer skillfully take us through the implementation of EOS, and I was just so taken by the impact that it had. I said, "Hey, that's what I want to do now." So after I exited, I took like a week off and I dove right into the EOS world, and that's how I became an EOS implementer. Having lived the journey on the other side of the table as the client, I can personally attest to the power of just putting this commonsensical framework into place, really leaning into it, burning the boats and leaving whatever we did behind, and really using this as the central operating system for our business was everything. It was the total difference. So now I'm seeing that in our clients, and I love the impact that we're making on helping really good businesses get to the vision that they had when they originally started their business.
Okay, so I'm going to put the EOS stuff aside for a moment, and I want to talk about agency life. So here's one more. This is my last AI dabble, and this is almost like a sense of depicting agency life. You're going to laugh when you see it, but it's like, I think the prompt was something about the inmates running the asylum. So you'll notice it looks a little bit like a bit of an asylum, a little bit of a, I don't know, prison or a, but with lots of sticky notes and creative types as well. But there's almost the sense that the agency business is a creative business, and creativity itself is chaotic. And so you have to be able to operate and strive and thrive in chaos in order to be successful in a creative led business. And the spark, right at the beginning of your statement, you said almost this. I mean, I can relate too many ideas. Like I find that like there are all these ideas inside me. I come into every meeting, I've got more ideas and more ideas, more ideas, and it's bursting. It's going to explode out of me, and I don't want to be contained, and I don't want to be stifled, and I don't want to have to be focused. I want to just keep on inventing and creating. But that chaos is just exhausting. If we talk about this idea of a system for harnessing human energy, we have just a certain limited amount of energy before we burn out. So when you look at this image, Eric, does it give you a little bit of agita? Is it accurate in terms of perhaps the way the business is, but not necessarily how it should be?
This feels exactly like agency life prior to us implementing EOS, because when you're dealing with a bunch of creative people and you're trying to harness them for the common goals or objectives of the business, that is an incredible challenge. But Just as chaotic as agency life is, it's just as rewarding because you're doing creative work. You're not just a manufacturer stamping out widgets, and at the end of the day, there's really nothing to show for that besides a number. The creativity part lends itself to attracting people that are a bit freestyle oriented and not like regimented, and that causes a lot of chaos. EOS does not mean to take away that creativity, but when we put a framework around, we said, look, be as creative as you want, but here's the box that you have to work within because we all agreed here's where we're going. And that focused all of that creative energy into making the agency better. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, some of the people pre EOS aren't there now because we realized through the EOS framework that they probably weren't the right people or they were the wrong people in the right seats. And we had to make changes to harness that energy and get everybody going in the same direction. But once we accomplish right people in the right seats, that chaos that you had shown through that image dramatically decreased because everybody was aligned where we wanted to go. There wasn't a lot of conflict.
Well, it comes back to the statement, right? Structure that liberates, not suffocates, which when you and I were brainstorming a little bit, we kind of came up with that little term, almost like a tagline as well. I've always said personally, which is I don't, people say think outside the box. And so I kind of built on that one day and I said, act inside the box, act freely inside the box, which is I don't care how small the box is. I don't care how stifling you might, or the parameters, or the structure, or the even the limitations. Just allow me to operate liberally and freely and creatively and innovatively inside the box. So it was a different spin. But I'll tell you, and I know you can talk to this. One thing, I was an account planner, I was a media planner, amongst other things. I was blown away by how much the creatives loved data. They loved it. The more specific, the more information, the more granular, the more information you could give them in a creative brief, the more empowered they were and able to actually create something that wasn't just insane, but was in fact anchored and grounded not only in a business reality, but attached to real results. And that to me was an aha moment.
I agree. I've had so many of those moments where you tie data and information to the creative, and that resulted in better results. And I can think of one right off the top of my head. We had a very, very large home services provider. They did plumbing and heating, and they did extermination, and they would open and close your pool. And they needed a coordinated message because they were all over the place because they did so many services for their clients. And when we brought to the creative team what was going on, one of the facts stood out like a sore thumb, and that was that only 5% of their clients use more than one of their home services. Well, the creative team jumped on that and said, look, rather than go find new customers, we want to do a whole campaign around cross selling and upselling. We already have people that love us and it results in the revenue that the client is looking for. But everybody was looking towards new customers, new customers, new customers. And the creative team had to identify, hey, look at this very, very important statistic. This is where the campaign should be, not over there. And there's a bunch of creative people driving the business results, which is a little unusual in a creative firm.
I love that example. By the way, I also used AI to come up with a logo.
Mhm.
If this stays Joseph Jaffe's Not Famous Entrepreneurs Edition, I'm kind of noodling and loving this whole concept of the entrepreneur's journey as a hero as well. So this was the logo that came. I said, create a logo for a talk show that is focused on the entrepreneur's journey. So I guess there's a light bulb with an arrow going up. I don't know. Do you like it? Does it stay,
I
or do
like
I?
it. I specifically like the arrow pointing up because the sky's the limit for entrepreneurs, whether it's their vision or the fact that they can achieve whatever they want if given the right circumstances. So, yeah, love it.
Hopefully, the arrow allows the agency to break through the ceiling after
That's
hitting the
right.
ceiling.
That's
Um,
right.
so I actually went and I did a little bit of research. I don't know how accurate these numbers are or how current they are, but I wanted to share them with you nonetheless. Just in terms of magnitude of scale, or orders of magnitude, I should say. So, according to this, as of 2023, there are 89,912 enterprises in the advertising agencies industry in the US, marking a 3.57% increase from 2022. that number seems insane. um, and, um, and so then I kind of went back and I looked a bit and what's a breakdown? So in a 2023 survey of 121 agencies, 46% of them had between 6 and 20 full-time employees. 22% served 50 to 100 serve 50 to 100 clients. The agencies were primarily located in the US. In this study, they went and looked at revenue growth as well. 74% of them had experienced revenue growth, which is great. 25% saw an increase in revenue, however, by 25% or less. 14.5% had no revenue change. 8.5% experienced a less than 25% decrease in revenue, and 3% facing more than a 25% decrease in revenue. So I was going down and I was just trying to say because I was specifically looking for something, in terms of is this business growing or not? And with all that data, this is what I settled on in the end. It's estimated that at least 30% of advertising agencies will fail or falter within the next 12 to 18 months. Let's talk a little bit about survival. Because right now, as I think you and I know, um, the agency landscape is a very weird landscape. The number of independents, if you will, are like sightings of the Loch Ness monster. Any agency that has grown, any agency that is growing, any agency that's winning awards, that's getting the headlines, that's gaining the big buys, or being snapped up by the holding companies. But the reality is the rest of them, right, are languishing and trapped, I guess, in some kind of a purgatory, whether that's a local or a regional hell. How do you see the landscape? I mean, I know through a lot of data points at you there. What's stuck? What doesn't? What
Yeah,
didn't?
I mean, those stats feel accurate despite the fact that, it's a small statistical universe. But it comes down to a couple things. The first thing is you meet an agency owner. It's very rare that they're actually a business minded person. They're typically a creative, right? And they came up through the creative ranks and they said, look, I could be better, smarter, faster. I want to start my own agency. So right away, they're at a disadvantage because they lean into the creative side and not how to run a business, how to structure the business, how to make money, and so forth. I find that to be the number one thing is that it's just not started. Like in my firm, I was more on the business side, and my partner Mike was more on the creative side. So we had a little bit of balance, which enabled us to grow a little bit larger than your typical 10-person or fewer agency, which was a great joy for us. But even at a certain level, you have to start adding things if you want to break through, right? The structure of your company has to change a bit. You have to bring in some professionals. And you know as well as I do that when a hot startup reaches a certain point, the board says, hey, we got to bring in a professional CEO here because that person who's founded that company, they were great at planting the seed, watering it, fertilizing it, getting to a certain level, but they don't have experience taking it to the next level. And someone who came in and let's say ran a 500-person agency now comes in and says, oh, I know how to do this. Here's best practices. Here's how we cut the learning curve to get to the next level. So in that agency world, creative people start. And you see the same thing in lots of professional services. Take out marketing agency, put an accounting firm, right? There's just so many mom and pop size accounting firms because the accountant is an accountant, not a business growth expert. And that's one of the challenges I think you find often with companies that are started on a passion perspective as opposed to a business foundation. Layer that in with everybody can hang out a shingle and call themselves a marketing agency. So the competition is fierce, which then drives um, price pressure. Hey, I'll do that project for 3,000 when you got a quote for 5,000 over there, which then really restricts the agencies from getting the profit parameters that they need in order to reinvest in the company and have smarter people join them and grow to that next level. If there was a higher barrier to entry to becoming a marketing agency rather than just printing a business card and going to a network event, you would have then a fewer competitors that could then increase the pricing so that they do have the profit structure they need. I have never yet met a marketing agency that had really fat margins unless they were in some unique fringe area. The typical agency doing advertising, public relations, lead gen, revenue generation, demand gen, whatever their focus is, they never have a fat enough margin to reinvest in the business to help it scale, simply because everybody and their brother can start a marketing agency tomorrow. So those are some of the things that I've seen that really restrict growth, and not good or bad because it is very rewarding working at or owning an agency. But when you start an agency and you have visions of growing it to a 100-person firm, you better have the skill set or the foundation to back that up.
So I want to dive into one thing that you said, I guess I'm asking the question: are these two things the same thing, or are they different things? Because you spoke about, and we've seen so many, ex Coca-Cola brand marketer decides to start an agency, or two people leave one of the large agencies and decide to start their own little boutique. But there are two things that they are perhaps not. They are perhaps creative types, or maybe they're suits, or whatever they are in terms of what their function was within the agency. You said they're not necessarily business minded people. But then there's another point, there's another descriptor, which is entrepreneurial or entrepreneurs. And I think maybe, and I'm thinking out loud, you have a bit of a double whammy here. And the double whammy is that you have these creative types starting agencies, boutiques, comms, shops, however you want to call it. And they are on two back feet, let alone one back foot, because they're not necessarily entrepreneurs, nor are they necessarily business minded people. And so immediately, we talk about at EOS about becoming vision, traction, healthy, right? We know that there is an abundance of vision in the, it's like, you kind of like, you kind of puke up all the vision. There's too much vision, too much unfocused vision. There is zero traction, zero accountability and discipline in terms of executing said vision. And as far as healthy is concerned, there's just, it's a mess, chaos, anarchy, politics, the works, dysfunction. So it stands to reason, just in that very graphic description, if you will, it's no wonder why agencies are faltering and or failing, because they are kind of at best 1 for 3. But the reality is, when it comes to that vision, traction, healthy component, they're probably 0 for 3, if I'm being kind.
I'll give you a personal example of exactly that scenario that you just painted. We hired an EOS implementer, and she said to us, you said that your goal was having one of the best agencies to work for, which would attract the right people. They would be retained, and those people would provide amazing services for your clients. We're like, yes, that's exactly what we said. And then she challenged us and said, well, tell me about your HR function. Well, there was no HR function. My partner and I were scanning resumes when we had some free time, and we were kind of freewheeling the interview process. And if we kind of liked them, that was it. We then accepted the challenge and hired a professional HR director who worked at a larger agency who was looking to, make her impact somewhere else. And she put all sorts of structures in place. We hired based on core values. We made sure we were using tools like the People Analyzer. And then all of a sudden, what we said we wanted was coming true because we had the understanding that we needed someone in that seat to execute, to use your term, to get the traction we needed from the people perspective of our business. Now, honestly, if I didn't have that EOS implementer, we never would have even considered that concept nor had any conversation around that. But there was someone objective saying, hey, you creative types, you say you want to do this. Let's see how that comes down to ground level, and we're going to execute on that. Her name is Jess. She is a total rock star. She not only takes care of the recruitment, but the retention, because she's really keeping an eye out for culture and making sure that she's the culture police and creating and breathing in excitement into the people component of our business. Well, that's not something that your typical agency person would consider, but it took an outside objective person to say, hey, look, you have a flaw in your thinking on how you're going to get to your vision. Here's ways that we could fill that.
Mm.
Now, the next thing any agency owner is thinking of, if they're listening to this conversation, is, wait a minute, that sounds expensive. And that's the other part, right? Because it's not just about willy-nilly hiring an HR person, but Does the budget support that? Do we have the margins? Do we have a rich enough pipeline to feel comfortable about adding this person to the below the line financials of our business? So it really ties all together into this framework that you run your business, not just piecemeal here, piecemeal there, make a move there, make a move here, but what does the entire holistic approach to running a successful agency look like?
I mean, I started kind of scratching, like breaking out into hives. I think about all the mistakes that I made personally. I mean, I remember, um, and I sold Crayon, my first business. I sold the business, and I say in spite of myself, because I remember we put together this beautiful. It was a deck with all the things we believed. It was essentially, now I'd look at it through an EOS lens, the construction of our core values. And probably one of them, if was, I'm paraphrasing now, was we don't work with arseholes. We don't work. We will never work with certain industries like tobacco or whatever the case may be. But we also wouldn't work with bad people, not just a bad client, but bad people. But unfortunately, what happens is when you get a piece of business and you need the business, you compromise, and that core value goes out the window. Maybe because you haven't actually called it a core value. It was just a slide in a deck, and what people don't realize, I think, is when you compromise yourself once, it's just a slippery slope, and it's a fast track to actually just spinning out of control. It's the same thing like we talk about with EOS. When you have the wrong person in the right seat, it doesn't matter how great they are at their job. If they're arseholes, do not exhibit your core values, they're toxic and they will kill your company. They will poison your company from the inside out. And I think that's the problem in the agency world today, is that we make too many compromises and concessions. What's that Hamilton line? If you don't stand for something, what will you fall for? You will fall for anything and everything.
Yeah, I mean, the pressure to hit the monthly number to keep the business running is so dramatic. You'll take a piece of business from a jerk, right? And that just your team's not happy. The profitability won't be there because the person's a jerk to begin with. And you're right. It's just this like a hamster wheel that you get on in agency life that is really hard to break from. Give you a quick example from my journey. Had maybe the most gifted graphic designer on our team who was also the wrong person in the right seat. She was negative. She made comments that were just anti our core values and core focus. But because she was such a good graphic designer, we stuck with her. One day, after she made some really egregious comments in an all team meeting, my partner Mike and I looked at each other and said, "That's enough," and just let her go on the spot. And the team was blown away. Like, what are we going to do about graphic design? This is crazy. You can't just fire someone. I said I'd rather have a company where I'm figuring out how to do the graphic design than have a culture that is being chipped away at every single day. And that was a big learning experience for us because we never should have hired that person in the beginning, no matter how good their graphic design skills. I'd rather have an A minus creative person and an A plus core values fit because now everybody's aligned and going in the right direction as opposed to people conflicting to where you want to go. Now, I fancy myself as a smart person, but I couldn't even see that that person, and she was probably with us for 2 years or so. I couldn't even see that that person was an actual obstacle to us achieving the vision we wanted to. Just didn't have the frame of reference or context to understand how core values should be literally used on a daily basis to not only recruit, but to retain and review people in the organization. If I would have known then what I knew now, that person would have lasted more than 90 days or maybe not have even been hired at all. That's a big learning when you look backwards.
Mm. I really like the way that you position it, and I was jotting down something as well, which is how long, and you answered it. How long did you let it slide?
Mhm.
How long did you tolerate it until and it should never have to come down to an egregious moment that is so out of control that you have no choice, right? It shouldn't be uh, black and white. There should be 256 shades of gray in this particular case, where even something that is kind of, one shade of gray is like, wait a second, something is not right, and we need to do something about it. And so the concession that I think too many businesses make, specifically because of not enough time to do their jobs, or all these fires to be put out. I think that's one thing. The other thing, I mean, I don't know about you, but how often did you actually end up with your partners discussing one person again and again and again and again, to the point where it was just sucking up your available energy? And guess what? In the spirit of what we call IDS, identify, discuss, and solve, nothing ever got done about it.
Mhm. Yeah, the IDS portion is great because there's no more than 7 days that goes by where you have an opportunity to spend at least an hour talking about the challenges, obstacles, and issues at your company, which is a gift because you have put aside that time to make your company better each and every week. So that's IDS, or a part of an L10 or level 10 meeting that we promote as EOS
Mm,
implementers. But what's interesting about that is that the 2 year comment that you made, right? How the heck could she last 2 years? Well, we weren't having quarterly conversations that we recommend in EOS. It's based on the core values, the objectives that person has, and the roles that are in their seat that we've identified in our accountability chart. When I look back, I want to smack myself on the side of the head, because if I would have had one of those conversations with this particular graphic designer, she would have failed in all three of those areas, right? The objectives she's working on, as we call them, rocks, the core values, and the 5 roles on the accountability chart. It would have been so obvious that, hey, you're not actually a good fit for this. Maybe put her on an improvement plan for 90 days, showing the areas that you need improvement. And if it didn't change, she would have been out of there in 6 months maximum, not 2 years. And then all of a sudden, like you said, you had to rip the band-aid off.
I see your rocks, and I raise you a scorecard, because going back to my own entrepreneurial journey as well, we never had a scorecard. We, we never had a scorecard. It's just how many leads we got today, and it was just so random and so ad hoc and so chaotic. And now, you mentioned something earlier, and I was thinking the same thing. I think you said I could kick myself. It's like, me too. Me too. And I look back and I go, like, even the fact that uh, I'm a little bit more, not self-deprecating, but I'm a little bit hard on myself. I was typically what EOS would call the visionary,
Mhm.
right? And I had a partner who was an integrator, but I was always, as the majority shareholder, in her face, in her business, not letting her do her job. I was the visionary trapped in the integrator's, role. But in addition to that, even something like a status meeting, what we called a status meeting, sometimes I showed up, sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I was late, sometimes I left early. Sometimes it was on a Monday, sometimes it was on a Thursday. Sometimes it was 30 minutes, sometimes it was 91 minutes. There was just no uniformity and standardization. What I realized at the end of the day, and this is the harsh reality, I didn't respect them, and I didn't respect myself, because that's what it comes down to. When you cannot commit to something as simple and basic as same place, same time, same agenda, get it done, you are disrespecting your colleagues, and you're disrespecting yourself. And by definition, you're disrespecting your family, and you're disrespecting your clients. Period.
Agreed. Invariably, clients that start the EOS journey complain about this, same meeting, same time, same agenda every week. They find it's rigid. It's just another meeting to add. And also, invariably, after 4 or 5 months, they're like, this is the best meeting we've ever had. I look forward to this meeting. I enjoy working with my colleagues. What a gift that is, to enjoy the time that you're working. Everybody respects each other. Everybody holds each other accountable to make the um, progress that they promised they would do in a previous meeting. It is just a lovely life. And to your point, also, everybody can now go home at 5 o'clock because everything's running smoothly, and it's not a day full of putting out fires and dealing with catastrophes. It's just a wonderful a business life to enjoy. Now, somebody's listening to this and saying, "These two guys blowing smoke up my skirt, right? How could it be that good?" I'm telling you from personal experience, it was that good. If I would have known about EOS 10 years prior in my journey, I wouldn't be sitting right here right now. I'd be on my little island with my palm tree and my Mai Tai, because I would have been so much further along in the journey, not making all of these typical business mistakes that people make because they don't have an understanding about how good it could be in your business.
Now, I would be on the island with you. Maybe we'd co-own the island because I swear to you, and I'm not joking, I've said the same thing, that if I had been running on EOS with Crayon and Evolution, my two companies, first of all, Crayon would have sold, but for 10 times what I did sell it for, and Evolution would still be running today. Probably the biggest vision I ever came up with in my life, right? Reverse engineering the startup from the brand backwards. What if Kodak acquired Instagram? What if Marriott incubated Airbnb? This idea of building a bridge between the slow, sluggish behemoth corporation that's not growing, that can only grow through acquisition, and guess which area and sector does grow, which is startups, apps, technology companies. And I wanted to almost create this beautiful marriage between the two. So you can tell the passion, the vision, the frustration still to this day, and something as simple as discipline and accountability, a little bit of structure that does not suffocate, it liberates. I would be, maybe there'd be two islands and they'd be connected through, I don't know, a tunnel or we just island hop and visit one another. But I mean, the sample size of two, we're both saying the same thing. We're both agency or ex-agency owners. Maybe, just maybe, we can now share some of the pains and the mistakes we made with others so that they don't have to go down that same painful journey.
That is exactly my motivation. I'm glad we were both able to exit, maybe put a few dollars in the bank, but the need to help other entrepreneurs understand that there's a better way or a shortcut to getting to their vision is what I'm all about. I would literally do it for free if I had to because of the joy that it brings me. Seeing the light bulbs go off in a leadership team meeting when they're like, wow, we could do it that way. That makes so much more sense. I mean, honestly, without being too touchy feely or emotional, that's what entrepreneurs want. They have a vision. Like you said, I had evolution. I knew that if I could combine these two things, and you couldn't really fulfill that vision because there was obstacles in your way. EOS just clears the obstacles.
All right. So as we wind down, I think we've planted the seeds or scattered the crumbs. But let me just ask you a question. Again, coaching, no coaching, discipline, no discipline. In general, what advice would you give to agency entrepreneurs and business owners? Well, first of all, I guess the fact that the agency founders may not be entrepreneurs and business owners, but what advice would you give them to in terms of how to, last another day, another year, return to growth. I call it actually something that is my own personal why statement: get unstuck, return to growth, and become forever changed.
I think that's a fabulous way. I mean, I can emotionally connect to that phrase as well. My one piece of advice is as follows: strategy before tactics. Let's not jump into starting an agency and grab some clients and start doing some work. Let's create a strategy by which we're going to set the bumpers, the framework that we're going to stay within, and that's going to make us unique. The problem is so many agencies just jump right into servicing clients, doing some project work, whatever, without having a strategy. And that strategy is, who is our perfect client? In your case, no jerks, right? Um, uh, what is going to differentiate us from the other agencies so we do win more than our fair share of accounts and are able to charge the fees that we need to continuously grow the firm, right? What are the strategies? See, so few people take the time to create that strategy. They just jump right into the tactics. So in life in general, having a good strategy, who is going to be your significant other, where are you going to live, what is your profession, all those strategic questions should be asked and defined first before you start diving into the tactical things. I don't think that people spend enough time developing a killer strategy by which everything else becomes a lot easier in life.
I completely concur, and I used to be paid by the acronym in my ex consultant days, but I actually came up with an acronym called COS, which is cultural, organizational, strategic, and tactical. And my argument was always: you start with strategy, and then you move in two directions. So parallel path, strategy to tactics, but also strategy to organizational. Now I see it as right process, structure, and of course cultural, which is the vision, component. In a way, a lot of that EOS stuff lives almost by coincidence, or not by coincidence, within cost as well. I'll just add a little bit of advice that I would give as well, which is realize that the reasons why you fail, if you do fail, and you may, but the reasons why will have nothing to do with your vision and everything to do with these unforced errors, and the commonsensical unforced errors that you could have eliminated so easily by just creating a simple structure that, again, does not suffocate. In fact, it liberates. So I would add that too. Eric, it's Thanksgiving week, and it's a week about giving thanks and expressing gratitude. I'm certainly grateful to have met you. I'm grateful for the opportunity to go down this EOS path and help other companies avoid making the mistakes that I made. What are you grateful for this Thanksgiving in 2023?
Well, the first thing is I'm grateful for my family because they allowed me the flexibility in my career, my unconventional career, to do what I felt was right to help people make some money, live my journey. I'm also grateful for the introduction to EOS because it changed my whole life. And I know that sounds a little weird, but once EOS was implemented, I was able to exit. Now I help other people, and the joy I'm receiving is certainly full of gratitude, especially the day before Thanksgiving. But the other thing is that I find like-minded people. When I met you, Joe, it was like, two peas in a pod. We had the same challenges and we had the same journey that we were going on, and I'm grateful for that. The EOS community is filled with a whole bunch of smart people that are really of the posture of help first. So, to be in a culture of a bunch of people, 600 plus implementers now that are all aligned on helping people, helping entrepreneurs and business owners on journey, I am grateful to be part of that.
I love hearing it as well, and I'm grateful, as I always have been, as I've been writing about since 2004 in my first book. I'm grateful for community, because you can have a personal family and you can have a professional family, but ultimately the power of community is the power of we is greater than me. And just for example, just the fact that I can tap into this community on a as needed weekly basis and just get all of the smarts, because that's the whole thing. We can hoard best practices and IP and all of our trade secrets, or we can just create an abundance mentality and just share and be as free with that advice, and pay it forward. Good goes around. Eric, I've always felt that you kind of give that off in abundance as well. So we are coming to the end of episode number 1 of the I need a sound effect, the entrepreneur edition. If you want to find out more about Eric, please go to eosworldwide.com / Eric dash Keiles. You can find out more about me. If you really wanted to find out more about me, I'm /Joseph-Jaffe. If you'd like a copy of the book Traction, email either Eric or myself, and we'd be happy to send you one. I also wrote an ebook called Why Every Business Needs an Operating System. And if you contact me, I'd be only too happy to send it to you. And finally, if you want to see how your organization stacks up, go take the organizational checkup that will tell you how vision, traction, healthy you are. And the good news is by hiring a coach, you might be able to get to where you need to get to. So Eric, we are at the end. Final word, my friend, will go to you, and we will finish exactly at 60 minutes. 30 seconds are yours.
This day before Thanksgiving, I wish all those entrepreneurs out there the vision and accomplishment of the business that they originally had in their mind when they started it. If they can accomplish that, then you can live the EOS life like Joseph and I did.
The EOS life. Love what you do, what is it? It's do what you love with
the people you love.
that you love. No, I knew it. I was just getting the syntax. Do what you love with the people you love. making a positive difference, being paid what you're worth, and having the time to do some other stuff as well. Because you know what? You know, you need to get a life in order to have a life. Eric, have a wonderful Thanksgiving, my friend.
Thank you so much, Joseph.